Welcome to Craig's Gun Channel. The Hi-Point carbine was originally released in 1996 during the Clinton-era federal assault weapons ban as a simple blowback-operated semi-automatic carbine in 9mm. It used cost-effective materials such as Zamak for its internal structural parts and injection-molded polymer and stamped sheet metal for its outer stock. Its no-frills design included a manual bolt hold-open, and the only rail option was a stamped metal one that could be used in place of the rear sight assembly. You could get it in any color you wanted as long as that was black. Accessories, such as lasers or muzzle brakes, were eventually offered, which used barrel clamps for attachment as the barrels were not available threaded. The triggers were mushy with little consistency from pull to pull. It required tools to disassemble, and most people thought they were ugly. But they worked, and the cost-conscious construction materials and manufacture allowed for them to be offered at very enticing prices. Compared to the limited competition out there at the time for pistol caliber carbines, they were a bargain, and they quickly developed a substantial following. In the years following its release, several new caliber chamberings were offered, and additional finishes such as chrome plating and an early swirl camo pattern were offered. Sales continued to be strong, but as with all things, competition began to increase, and it was clear design changes were needed. In 2009, a tactical stock design was offered, which brought a fresh look as well as the addition of several functional enhancements. First, a last-round bolt hold-open was incorporated into the gun, assembly bolts were replaced with locking pins, and optic and accessory rails were incorporated into the design. Let's take a closer look. And of course, before working on any firearm, we need to make sure it is free and clear of all ammunition. So on the Hi-Point carbine, the magazine release is right here. You would simply push in on that to release the magazine. And as we can see, the magazine is free and clear and empty. And go ahead and open up the chamber area, and we can see that that's also free and clear. So we're able to start looking at the controls and features of the Hi-Point model 995. First of all, it's a single action trigger. So the trigger, all it does is releases the striker. It is a striker fired firearm. This is our magazine release. You'd push in on that to release the magazine. This is our charging handle. This is our safety. There is a little red dot there so that when it's in the ready to fire position, the red dot will show. To put it on safe, you would simply flip that lever up. So flip up like that, and it's on safe. It is a rear aperture Peep style sight, adjustable for both windage and elevation. The windage is adjusted with this screw right there, and elevation would be with that screw right there on the top. The front sight is a protected hooded post, and that itself, there's a nut right there that you could loosen, and that would allow this entire assembly to go up or down to get your initial zero. Then once it's set, you'd tighten that down, and then any fine adjustments would be made with the adjustments on the sight assembly here. The entire sight assembly can be removed if you just want to mount some type of an optic on the top rail. There is a top rail, there is a bottom rail located right here, and there is a rail just under the barrel here in front of the foregrip. It has a recoil mitigation system, which just uses coiled springs. Being 9mm, I'm not sure if it's really needed, but it's there anyway. Have our ejection port there, and you can see the extractors. That's the extractor right there. The bolt charging handle can be locked back. Take the safety off. Can be locked back into the position there with that larger opening. The slot that the charging handle goes back and forth in, there's that rounded out section right there. The charging handle itself goes back and forth on the nut that holds it in place, and there's a little stepped-in shoulder right there that will engage into that hole. So you would just need to pull the charging handle back and then push in so that it goes into that opening, and that'll hold the bolt back. So basically you would just pull it back and push in, and that will lock the bolt back. And then to release, you just pull out and go forward. It does have an internal last round hold open. After the last round is fired in the magazine, which has a little shelf on it right there, will push internally on a lever that will lock the bolt back. So now that we've taken a look at the exterior features, let's go ahead and pop it open so you can take a look to see how it, go ahead and field strip it and take a look at, see how it operates on the inside. So first step, would be to remove the charging handle, and these steps can actually be done in really just about any order, but the charging handle does have to be removed to be able to take the top cover off. So we'll go ahead and take the top cover off, or the charging handle off first. Now High Point does provide a tool, and to aid in disassembly, it has a little screwdriver tip on it, which you can use to adjust the sights. It has a couple different hex head bolt sockets, and then there's a two-prong attachment there, which is used to unlock the takedown pin locks. If you notice, there's two little holes on either side here. One of them is a rivet that this lock pivots on. So you would just simply put those two prongs in those holes, and then that would allow you to then turn it to unlock it. But we'll get to that in just a moment. First, we'll go ahead and take this bolt off. So once you loosen it, it just comes out as an assembly right there. The next step would be to remove the top forearm cover right here. Now this is all a molded polymer piece right here. It's held in place with this lock section right here, and you would need to flip that up. There again, you can use your little tool, just put it into the groove that's in it, flip up, that unlocks it, and then simply push forward on it, and that unlocks. We can set that aside. What holds that in place, there's these little rail sections here, and they engage into these rail sections right here. So once that's off, the next step would be to remove the two pins right here, and they are sprung, so there's a spring pressure on them. So you would need to push in to release that spring tension, and then you could unlock the locks. Do that on both the front and the back. Once that's unlocked, you can pull the pins out. Once the pins are out, the top cover comes off as an assembly, and there's a little metal tab here that would go underneath the stock to hold it in place. So you just pivot it up and pull off. I forgot to point out, it's helpful to have the safety off when removing that, just so that it clears the notch up there. Now, conversely, the next step would be to take the barreled action out. And so at this point, it's helpful to put the safety in the on position, to put the safe on, or so lift up on the lever. First, you need to then, the final step is take this lock off, and it's a little U clip. This metal piece here, which has the serial number on it, is attached to the metal actual frame of the receiver that's inside this. This plastic stock wraps all around it. You don't have to take all these little screws out that are everywhere to disassemble it. You just remove those pins and then remove this U-clip. There again, you can use your little tool just to get some leverage in there. These are usually a little on the tight side, so and then once you remove that, at this point, the entire action will lift out of the stock. So then we can set the stock aside. Now, for normal field stripping and cleaning, you do not need to remove the front side assembly. The bolt does wrap around the barrel, so when you take it off, you could slide it up here and get access to everything. To completely remove the bolt, to take a close look at it, you do have to remove the front sight, so we're going to go ahead and do that. It's held in place with two Allen socket set screws. So once you loosen those, just remove that. And now at this point, there's this little section here. So once you have those off, the next step would be to remove this bolt assembly. So to do that, it's held in place with this pin right here, and that pin, it's a little metal disc. So you have that little metal disc right there, and that's held in place with this metal clip. Now it's got a couple little grasping grooves right there that you could use to pull back. But I have to be honest, at least on this particular one, it is very difficult to pull back. So I just honestly use a screwdriver just to get a little bit of leverage on it and pop it back. Now once that's popped back, you could then simply pull back slightly and then go forward, and you can completely remove off the barrel then. Here's our recoil spring with its little guide rod. So let's take a look at the various parts here. This is the metal frame of the firearm. There's where that clip goes, that little U-clip. That would go right there, just so you know kind of where the parts are located. This is that bolt hold open on the last round. The magazine would push up on this little lever right there, and when that's lifted up, this little metal piece right there comes up, and that's what would catch on the bolt to lock it to the back. Of course, we have our safety here. This is our sear. There's the trigger. This is the transfer bar and disconnector. This is another transfer bar that connects to the sear. So when you pull the trigger, what happens is this transfer bar will push against that one, which will push it down. When it goes down, that pulls the sear down, and that sear going down is what fires the weapon. Now once the sear goes down and the gun fires, when the slide comes back, it would hit this piece here, this disconnector, which would push it down. Once it pushes it down, it disengages from this arm, which allows the sear to come up and catch the striker, so it's ready for the next round. This piece here, and it's sometimes you'll hear it, I don't know if you can hear that or not, it rattles around. That's a drop safety. This part is actually a weight, and it's attached to a little lever right here. And that lever goes underneath the sear pin, and the sear pins are right here. And that's what connects to the sear. That's what this transfer bar connects to. So when that goes down, it pulls the sear down. Well, this sear basically just goes up and down is how it functions. So if the firearm would be dropped down on its bottom, theoretically the inertia from the sear going down, it could have enough energy to pull the sear down enough to fire the weapon. So what this does, this weight, is if that would occur, the weight would slap down at the same time. That lever would come up and apply force upward on the sear to counteract the energy of the sear trying to go down. So it just helps to prevent it from being able to, accidentally fire if the firearm is dropped. So you want to leave all of that on there. And it rattles, and a lot of people aren't sure, really what's that for, and some people have even removed it. The gun will still operate and fire with all of that removed. However, it's not as safe because there again, that is a drop safety. Now, you should not disassemble this any further. You can get access to everything here. You can clean it all up, scrub it up, everything really good. The safety, the way it works, if you notice there's the lever there, it's attached to like this metal disc, and there's a little notch right here where that sear pin goes. When you put it on safe, the notch isn't there anymore, and that physically blocks the sear from being able to go down, locking it in place, making the firearm safe. So then when you put it on fire, that notch aligns, then when you pull the trigger, the sear can go down. Have our feed ramp right here, of course the chamber area. Really this is as far as you should ever disassemble this. Any damage or anything to any of these components could render the firearm inoperable or unsafe. So you just want to wipe everything down, clean it up good, give it a light coating of oil for lubrication and corrosion prevention, and then you can begin reassembly. Now, as far as the bolt itself, we have our bolt here. Now, this is also, it's cast ceramic, the same as the frame that's on there. And it's just a heavy mass. This is a blowback operated weapon. It does have some steel inserts, hardened steel where it needs them. Like there's a hardened steel piece right here. That's where it catches that bolt lock. This is a hardened steel channel right here where the striker and firing pin goes, and the bolt face itself is a hardened steel section. This is that locking pin right there, so you can remove that. There's a nested 2 coil springs. That's to operate the striker assembly, and then you have the striker itself. It has two. It's made out of 2 pieces of spring steel. That's the extractor that catches on the edge of the cartridge, and the ejector is actually the firing pin or the striker itself. When the slide goes all the way to the back on recoil, it will extend pretty far forward, and that will then kick the empty cartridge out. Now, that makes these firing pins, they're prone to damage because they can stick so far out. So you want to avoid being too vigorous with, pulling the charging handle back to eject like a live round or something like that. Or if you have a jam or something that's in there, you want to be careful because you don't want to damage that firing pin. But with that, you'd want to go ahead and clean everything out. Reassembly is just the opposite. So first you'd put in your striker firing pin, your coil springs, your assembly pin here. There's a little protrusion that comes out of the front. That goes toward the springs. And it's got a the shape in there kind of like a puzzle piece, so it can only go in one way this way. So just make sure you put the little protrusion in toward the inside, toward the springs. You put the barrel through. The recoil spring goes in this section right here underneath the barrel. On the front of that bolt, there's this little ledge, and that's what goes against the recoil spring. So just like that. So once you get that into position, you would just need to push the bolt back. You align that pin with the corresponding hole right here. And the pin has to be in front of this little metal section right there. So basically, you pull back, align that pin into the hole, you have your lock section here, so you just push it back into place. There again, you have a little mallet or something just to knock it back into place. So once you have the bolt in place, go ahead and put it on safe just to hold everything in. Don't forget the little plastic buffer piece here. And it goes around the barrel and then around this square lug right there. You then put the tail end of the barreled receiver section into the stock and then just pivot it down. Make sure that that lug comes out of the bottom. You have your U-clip. Clip that into place and push it in. And that basically holds it all together. That little metal clip goes underneath the edge, like so. And then you just pivot it down. Put your pins in. Push up on the pin. And with your little tool here, you can lock those in place. Do the same for the rear. Just so you can see how that, just like that. Put the front forearm cover in place. Slide it back. And then lock the latch down. Replace your bolt handle assembly. And snug that down. It doesn't have to be crazy tight. And since we've removed the front sight, go ahead and put it back in its position. Now there'll be a couple marks on the barrel where the set screws were, so you can use those to help align up, make sure everything's in the correct position. Tighten the set screws down. And we are reassembled. Do a function check. So pull the trigger, make sure everything seems to work. Cock the firearm. pull the trigger, keep the trigger in place, cock it again, make sure it resets. And I don't know if you could hear that or not, it did finally reset. Pull the trigger, and everything is operating the way it should. And we are reassembled. The new tactical stock design, along with all of its improvements, has allowed the Hi-Point carbine to remain a great economical alternative in a market that's growing every day. Today, these handy little rifles are available in 9mm, 10mm, 40 Smith & Wesson, 45 ACP, and 380 ACP. While the one I have does not have a threaded barrel, new production versions do, and they're available in a variety of colors and camo patterns. There's a large aftermarket of parts for these guns, ranging from lights and lasers all the way up to drop-in replacement stock assemblies. It's easy to spend more on upgrades than you may have paid for the rifle to begin with. They function well, and Hi-Point offers a lifetime warranty, and their customer service has always been accepted as being top-notch. They remain a great option for a new gun owner or anyone else that wants a fun, reliable pistol caliber carbine. I hope that this information is of value, and if you like the video, I would ask that you hit the like button and subscribe if you want to continue to see more like this. I value your comments and feedback, and as always, until next week, stay safe.